Hi, I'm Max Brantley of the Arkansas Times. It's Friday, November the 7th, and I've got news today from Arkansas. Right before walking in today, I got a kind of a stunning jolt by looking at exit poll results from NBC News that were done in Arkansas on election night. Lots of interesting findings there. I'm going to post a link later today on the blog if you want to take a look. The ones that really struck me were these, though. Young people aged 18 to 24 and women voted strongly for the Republican candidates for the top two offices, Tom Cotton and Asa Hutchinson. This is a reversal of pattern and is perhaps the most distressing news of the election night on what was a bad night for Democrats all around. Elsewhere today, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided to take up a case that could wreck Obamacare. It deals with subsidies extended in states where states didn't choose to set up health insurance exchanges, a lawsuit that challenges that. If those federal exchanges aren't allowed to proceed with subsidies, it will eventually erode and destroy the whole program. With it could come the big money that comes to Arkansas, which would, in theory, be a good news to all the Republicans that ran against Obamacare. But the truth is, in Arkansas, there's a great need for that money. It's undergirding the entire state budget. But that fight is going to go on. There's a huge split in the Arkansas legislature among the Republican delegation with some pretty committed opponents of Obamacare, people who will not vote to extend the private option. And it's raised its head this week in news that there's going to be a challenge in the Senate by Gary Stubblefield to the expected leadership of Jonathan Dismang, who was a private option supporter. Some unhappiness about Dismang making some bipartisan considerations in some of his appointments is also working to encourage Stubblefield to run, but really the big issue is private option and the money, so that's something to watch. The legislature also is going to have to deal with yet another expense that Governor Beebe added on them this week, and that is that Beebe approved a 1% pay raise for state employees. Small amount of money, $2.7 million for the rest of this year. They haven't had much of a raise. It's a small sop. But money hadn't been coming in fast for the state, and it's going to be another expense that'll be hard to take away. Yet another thing that's going to make it very hard for Asa Hutchinson to balance his budget without the private option money. He certainly won't be able to cut taxes if he loses that money. News today on the marriage front. A federal judge in Missouri, which is in the 8th U.S. Circuit, struck down Missouri's ban on same-sex marriage. It was the first state in which a federal judge in the 8th Circuit has struck down that law. Arkansas is in the 8th Circuit. Those of us who'd like to see marriage equality come to Arkansas can hope that this will provide some encouragement to Judge Christine Baker, who's going to hear a federal court suit in Arkansas November the 20th. There was bad news on marriage yesterday from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, which reversed 4 other federal courts and said that 4 states could ban same-sex marriage. This sets up a conflict among circuit courts of appeals that likely is finally going to get this issue decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. Also on the issue of sexual equality, the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce has announced that it opposes the Fayetteville City Ordinance that provides housing and employment protection to people in a variety of classes, age, gender, race, but also sexual orientation, says it's bad for business. A group that's fighting for this ordinance has criticized the chamber for taking this view, says its arguments don't hold water. I think it's interesting that the chamber board in ex officio slots includes people like G. David Gearhart, the chancellor of the University of Arkansas, which has its own non-discrimination policy and sexual orientation. I'm hoping David Gearhart will say that he doesn't associate himself with this decision by board of directors on which he serves. Elsewhere, we learned that who the headliners are going to be at a big concert at the Clinton Library on November 15th on the 10th birthday. Or does Nick Jonas or Kool and the Gang excite you? They're going to be in a big pavilion that night. It could be cold, it could be rainy. Tom Cotton's people had in the press on the phone today to talk about their successful media strategy and how they beat the other side at polling and campaign strategy and everything else. They wouldn't allow the Arkansas Times to participate. We have not been nice boys, they think. We'll get by somehow or another. Finally, one thing I want to say in response to a sartorial comment on the Facebook yesterday about these videos. These shirts really are ironed in the morning. I can't help it if they don't look kind of wrinkled by the time I do this show, but I'm going to try and do better on my wardrobe. My wife thinks I should too anyway. I'm Max Brantley, and I'll be back next week.